Grand, so welcome to our musical theory lesson today. We're going to do a little bit of revision. So we'll revise the duration table, we'll talk about the notes and the rests. Once we've done that, we'll talk about how we lengthen and shorten notes and how we subdivide notes. So at the very start, before I hit record, I said to everyone about subdividing notes. Don't be panicked if you don't understand what the word subdivide means. Alright, it's quite a big word, but it just means how we break the notes down. And the way we do that is by using our duration table that we spoke about before in previous lessons. And we will cover that again today. So basically knowing what happens when you split notes in half and what happens when you split notes in three. So, a little bit of revision. Remember when we spoke about pitch? Alright, so a pitch basically means how high or how low a note is. That's what pitch is. And we spoke about the notes on the staff with our 5 lines, where we started on G with the treble clef and we went all the way up to high A. Alright, all those changes between spaces and lines are different pitches. And a note can also be long or short. So this is what we deal with as drummers more than with pipers, okay? Because with drums, you all play the drums. You know when you hit a drum, you're not going to get a different pitch, you're not going to get a low G or a high A, you're just getting a whack and that is it. So with drummers, we deal more in duration. So the space between one note or another. That's what duration is. The shape of the note tells us its duration, or basically tells us how long it lasts. So for us drummers, remember when we had a crotchet, it was tap, tap, or 1, 2. If it was quavers, it would be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Semiquavers, 1 wee and a 2 wee and a. Alright, so those tell us how fast we're playing, alright, between our notes. It tells us how long each note is. And there are 6 different notes in common use, and we learned them before. We recognised their names and realised their duration compared to each other. And we used the duration table to do this. Alright, so I'm going to whiz through this because this is a revision for us. And on the side we've got a big circle here. I want you to think of that circle as a pizza. Alright, so the pizza is complete. So it's a whole pizza, or a whole note, or a pie, whatever. Some folk prefer thinking of pies. I like pizza. Alright, I'm going for pizza. So the whole pizza, as big as it can be, alright, or the whole note that we're thinking of is a semi-breve. And it's a hollow note head. Our next note was a minim, so we split that semi-breve in half and we got 2 minims. So we split the pizza in half and we get 2 slices of pizza. Please note that the amount of pizza is the exact same. Alright, it's the same amount of pizza, it's just in 2 bits. And our next one, we split the minims in half and we've got 4 crotchets. Alright, so or 4 bits of pizza. And again, still the same amount of pizza. Alright, if we take these 2 bits of pizza and add them up or double it, we get a full size of pizza. Alright, so you can see how we're starting to subdivide the whole pizza, or split it into equal bits. And then we split it in half again, and we had 8 quavers. And remember the quaver was a filled in note head with a stem and 1 tail. So there's our pizzas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But when we add it up, it's all the same amount of pizza still. 16 semiquavers, so remember it was a filled in note head, a stem and 2 tails. And then at the bottom here, instead of writing the tails, I've used beams, because you'll see in pipe band snare drumming, that's what we see most. We don't really see tails on our notes very often. Tenor drummers, you will see tails on your notes quite a lot, because you don't play as many notes as we do, the snare drummers. And then the last one, 32nd notes, or 32 demi-semiquavers. Filled in note head, stem and 3 tails this time, or 3 beams. And remember again, the beams represent the tails. And you can see here, a pizza has been well and truly cut up now. Okay, So when we play, for example, demi-semi-quavers, if I want to add them up, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them equal one crotchet. So if you see in a bar of music a crotchet, boom, 2, that's your crotchets there. If you want to play demi-semi-quavers instead of a crotchet, you would have 8 of them, and it would sound like that. Okay, if you wanted to play quavers instead of a crotchet, you would get, or semi-quavers, 1, 2, 3, 4, you would get 1 knee and up, 1 knee and up, all fitting in the exact same space as the crotchet does. Alright, so remember I was saying that the notes tell us their duration. Alright, so that lasts a whole beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, and I can't say these ones fast enough. They would just be 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll play them, much easier for you to follow. Alright. Every single one of these notes are called simple notes, and we'll explain that in our next lesson. Alright, a simple note is a note that can be divided into 2 notes of equal or lesser value, or 2 smaller simple notes. Okay, so you see that this note can be split in half, this one can be split in half, these two can be, they can all be split in half, every single one of them. And this is how we counted it. Remember, we were saying our crotchets were 1, 2, 3, 4. Our minim was 1, miss, 3, miss, because this minim equals 2 of these crotchets. Then we had 1 and 2 and 1 E and a 2 E and a. And the demi-semi-quavers aren't down because we can't count them fast enough. Again, the way I count it is I'll count them like quavers. I'll go 1 and 2 and, but I fill the space with demi-semis. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. And there were our rests. So we've done this all before. Okay, every single one of these we've done. So it's just a nice little bit of revision for you before we look at how to lengthen our notes. So we're looking at the ways we lengthen notes using dots and ties. And the first way we're going to talk about is using dots. So you might have seen notes with a dot placed after it. Alright, you'll have seen dots and cuts where we're swinging the music. Alright, so when there's a dot placed after it, it makes it that little bit longer. Alright, so the space between the tap and the next tap will be a bit longer. Alright, so it increases its duration by half. And you're thinking, half of what? Half of a pizza? Half of a sausage? No, it increases its duration by half of itself. So you can see there, you've got a crotchet. Alright, you put the dot after it, it makes it the length of a crotchet and a quaver. So say this is a crotchet here. Alright, if you're to put a dot after it, it's going to last that little bit longer. Alright, it stretches the duration of it and makes it last that little bit longer. So a dotted crotchet is the same length as a crotchet and a quaver. You're not going to play a crotchet quaver. Alright, it just lasts longer. Alright, so dot placed after a crotchet makes it equal to the length of a crotchet plus a quaver. And it says or 3 quavers. And you're thinking, well, how does that work? Well, if you take that first crotchet and split it in half, you get 2 quavers, like that. So it's the same duration as that. So we're just splitting it down even more. But the key is knowing what that dot equals. So a dot is equal to half of the original note. So if it was a quaver, alright, you've got a quaver with a dot. So you've got your original quaver and you're adding the dot, which is half of that. So it just makes it that little bit longer. And again, you don't need to physically play these 2 notes. You're only playing the one, but it lasts a bit longer. Alright, so before you get to your next tap, you're waiting that little bit longer. Alright, and the exact same as above, it can equal 3 semiquavers. And if we need, I can draw this on my whiteboard after it, before we look at our next lesson. Not a drama at all. And notes can also be made longer by tying it to another note. So for us drummers, we'll recognise that as a drum roll. Alright, so a crotchet to a crotchet with a roll sign would be a 13-stroke roll. Alright, they're known as ties, or some folk will refer to them as binds. Alright, they're known as ties. So that's 2 ways that we would lengthen a note. Okay? And then you can do it with quavers, you could do it with any notes. Okay? For pipers, they'll see that and they'll stretch their note for the length of that time. For drummers, we can't stretch a note, but we can roll through 2 notes, as you see there. So we would roll from that note right through to that note. Or if it was a 5-stroke roll or 2 quavers, we would roll from that note right through to that one. Alright. Dotted notes are known as compound notes. So remember we said we had simple notes, or simple time, where the beat note can split in half. If it's compound time, it can split into 3 bits. And you might be thinking, oh, this is so confusing. Well, we've only got simple and compound time for now. That is it. Alright, we're not dealing with any other crazy types of time. Alright, this is it. Simple and compound time. The beat note's either going to split in half or split into 3. So if it's simple time, you're splitting it in half. Compound time, you're splitting it into 3. And you might think, well, how do you split a crotchet into 3? You can't. But if it's got a dot on it, yes, you can. Alright, so if it's got no dot, you would split that in half and get 1, 2 quavers. But the dot gives you your 3rd quaver. Alright, so that's how you're splitting it into 3. And it's important that we understand this when it comes to time signatures, the 2 numbers at the start of the music. If we can understand what a dot does to a note, then when we go to understand time signatures, it makes life so much easier. I promise you. And the same applies here. Alright, so if I cover up this dot with my wee mouse pointer, there's a name, better name for it, but I'm going to call it the pointer. Oh, it's disappeared. That's annoying. Where is it? There. I'm going to need to move it a little bit now and then so it doesn't disappear. If I cover that quaver up, the dot up, sorry, and we split that quaver down, we can split it in half, and we end up with 2 quavers. Boom. There's the dot, or semiquaver, sorry. There's the dot, that gives us our 3rd one. So to split the quaver in half, you've got 2 semiquavers. The dot gives us our 3rd one. So that's how we figure out if a note is simple or compound. If it's got a dot after it, it's always going to be a compound note, so it can split into 3. Okay, now this is the bit that I think will be a wee touch easier with me writing it on the board, but we're going to look at it just now anyway, because you might find it easy depending on whether you paid attention to the duration table part of the lesson where we split all the notes down. We're basically looking at how we can split notes down. Okay, so we already know that the crotchet, or the quarter note, can be split in half to make 2 quavers. We already know that. Okay, so it's saying here you've got 1/8 note and 1/8 note equals 2/8 notes, which added together give you that quarter note. So it's basically saying 1 quaver, add another quaver, you get 2 of them, add the 2 together, you get a crotchet. So a 16th note, a 16th note and an 8th note, which is 2 semiquavers and a quaver. Alright, add these 2 quavers up, you get another quaver, which is telling us there, an 8th. Add it to the other quaver and you get a crotchet. And again, I think this will be a bit easier when I've got the whiteboard. I can write it out for you. Okay, this is showing us what it looks like the other way around. Alright, you could have a quaver and 2 semiquavers. Okay, and then you can have 4 semiquavers. 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 4 of them. Add them all together, you get a crotchet. And again, if you've got your duration table handy, It's almost like a map that you can use, where you can say, well, what does this equal? What does that equal? Alright, you always just work your way up using the duration table, and you'll be able to see what everything equals. And here's a bit more of a complex, slightly trickier subdivision here. You've got 2 demi-semiquavers, or 2 30-second notes, and 3 semiquavers. And all you're doing is adding them up, okay? So these 2 semiquavers, you could add them together to get 2 demi-semis, sorry. Add them together to get a semiquaver there. Added to that semiquaver makes a quaver. These 2 added together make a quaver. Add your 2 quavers together, you get a crotchet. And again, might be a wee bit confusing. The best way to go about it is almost treat it like it's simple maths. Alright, so you're adding things up. So you've got something, for example, say a simple maths exam. So that's my phone, I'll just cancel it. You might have a simple maths question where it's, for example, 3 plus 5 plus 2 plus whatever, and you work them out as you go, and you add them up as you go. It's the exact same as this, except you're not dealing with many numbers. You're dealing with a small amount of numbers. Okay? And they're all usually adding up to equal the exact same thing. And then we've got here a quaver, because it's got 1 beam or 1 tail, and it's got a dot after it. Alright, so you've got your quaver, 16th note for the dot, and this note here has got 2 beams. Alright, so that's a semiquaver. Adding them up, you get a crotchet. And you'll probably start recognising this. You'll be like, well, I've seen that before. Disregard the 5 lines. For snare drumming, we would only have 1. Alright, that's a right left, or if it was below the line, it would be right left. But it's a dot and cut for us. Alright, so instead of 1 and, you're getting 1 and, 1 and. Alright, and you'll have seen them before. Okay? Right, left arm, right, left arm, things like that, or right, left arm, or zzz, da da. That's where the dots and cuts come from, alright, because we're stretching the note with the dot, and we're cutting it here with the little cut. And the cut is basically adding a tail to the note. That's all the cut is. Okay, so we're going to do, I was going to do a little test, but I don't think I will. What I'll maybe do is get the whiteboard out, and we'll explain the subdividing notes a little bit more. Okay, so if you were watching this and you weren't part of the live stream lesson, then if you've got any questions, then please get in touch, and I'll make sure that I put up all the videos that will help with subdividing notes and things. I'll put that all up on the Google Classroom for you to watch along to. Okay, thanks again for watching, and look forward to our next one.